Alright, good evening folks, it's Enforcer Matt and welcome back to another Short War video, and today we have very big news coming out of the Black Sea region that Russia has now begun threatening the United States that if we continue flying our UAV surveillance flights over that territory, then they will take prompt responsive measures to ensure those flights can no longer continue, and obviously that is very escalatory language. We're not really sure what that means or entails, but currently the officials are trying to sort that out, and we're also hearing over the last 2 days a massive series of Ukrainian drone attacks on Russian territory, and also we're receiving very good news that Israel may be handing over those Patriot air defense systems to Ukraine in the future pending the result of negotiations, and also we're hearing as well of absolute chaos in Lebanon as a major war between Israel and Hezbollah looms over the horizon. But with that, we're jumping into our first news article of the day, which goes to Status 6 military and conflict news. We can see that the Russian Defense Minister Andrei Belousov has instructed the General Staff of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation to undertake prompt responsive measures against flights of American UAVs in the Black Sea region, according to the Russian MOD. And also, it wasn't immediately specified what those measures might look like, but we're told they're going to take measures that might prevent the UAVs from flying over that territory. And obviously, the US has been flying their UAVs over international waters. Nobody controls the waters that we're flying over. So right now, Russia's talking about taking away the ability of these flights to be conducted in international territory, which obviously goes against all logic and common sense, but Russia's not letting that get in the way of threatening the United States once again for preventing these flights. But of course, as everybody knows, Russia's usually full of hot air anyway, so this could be another empty threat, but we'll have to wait and see if this actually pans out to be some sort of escalation. But anyways, with that, we're moving into our next news article, which goes to Nexta, and in this one, we're learning that British intelligence outlines the consequences of successful strikes on Russian air bases, and recently, Ukraine has launched a series of successful strikes on Russian air bases from which drones were launched, forcing Russia to reduce the number of launches temporarily, and also according to intelligence reports, Ukraine has thwarted Russia's plans to establish control over its airspace. So for months now, we've been hearing about major Ukrainian drone attacks on Russian air bases, and we've always been speculating exactly what is Ukraine's overall grand plan when it comes to these attacks on these bases. And overall, it looks like the plan here, at least temporarily, is to thwart the Russians' plans to control the airspace over Ukraine, and maybe it's in preparation for the F-16s, but generally though, it's simply about taking the initial goal of establishing control over the airspace. And it looks like Ukraine has done a pretty good job of keeping control of their airspace. Obviously, Ukraine does have a bit of a disadvantage because they don't have a very large air force, and Russia does have the advantage on that front, but nonetheless, Ukraine has used consumer drones and also other drones as well to prevent Russia from using their aircraft to really cause a lot of damage. But with that, we're moving into our next news article here, and this one goes to Status 6 military and conflict news, and like I mentioned a moment ago, there have been some massive Ukrainian drone attacks on Russian territory over the last couple of days, and we're learning that about a day ago, Ukrainian drones attacked Transnef's fuel depot near Migrant in the Tambov Oblast of Russia, causing a fire at the facility, and the governor of the Tambov Oblast, Maxim Yegorov, said there were no casualties, and that the facility is located over 330 kilometers from the border with Ukraine. So as we can see, Ukraine has decided to strike yet another fuel depot that Russia has, and we've seen over the last couple of weeks and actually months that Ukraine has been targeting oil refineries and also fuel depots on purpose to try to damage the Russian economy, and this is another one of those attacks. And as we can see right here on the map, it's about 330 kilometers away from the border with Ukraine, so not the deepest strike we've ever seen inside of mainland Russia, but certainly a deep strike nonetheless. And we can see right here a satellite image of the actual fuel depot itself, and this was attacked with drones the other day. So a lot of damage being done here, and also, once again, more damage to the Russian oil industry. But with that, we're jumping into our next news article here, and this one goes to OSINT Technical, and we're also learning of a successful Ukrainian strike into Russian territory reported in the Shebekino-Belgrad Oblast, and Shebekino served as a major Russian crossing point for their recent stalled offensive into Kharkiv. So clearly a very strategic strike. This is the crossing point for the offensive into Kharkiv. So this strike essentially is going to cut off the Russians that are left there trying to make a move on Kharkiv. This is going to cut them off, and this is a very important strike indeed. So let's take a look at the video and see just how bad the strike really was. So as you can see here, there's a lot of black smoke emanating from the distance right here over that crossing, and it was a pretty big hit because something's on fire as well. So not only was something destroyed, but something caught on fire, and knowing how it works with the Russians, that will probably end up spreading, and also the Russian fire department won't be able to put it out. So that could get worse over time, but we'll have to wait and see. But with that, we're moving into our next news article here, and this one goes to Nexta, and we're also learning of more UAV attacks, and we're told that UAVs were reported flying over 3 Russian regions, and according to reports, 4 drones were allegedly shot down over the Tver region, 2 over the Moscow region, and 1 over the Belgrade region. And in the first video from the Tver region, based on a local's distressed exclamation, it appears that a drone attacked a factory. So let's take a look and see if we can tell what exactly was hit. So right here you can see the drone flying over to go hit its target, and unfortunately this video actually does not show the impact. You can kind of hear it in the background very vaguely near the end of the video, and this video is about a minute long or so, so we won't watch the whole thing, but that was the drone that went in and hit that target. So as you can see, there is indeed proof that it did hit, and what we're seeing here is maybe the aftermath of it. There's a big plume of smoke right here, and this might be what was hit in the Tver region, perhaps a factory, but simply based on the footage we can't confirm that, but the locals appear to believe that there was a factory that was hit. So we'll just have to wait and see if more details come out. But with that, we're moving into our next news article, and this one also goes to Nexta, and we're receiving some very good news as well, that Ukrainian guerrillas have discovered the air defense system that protects Putin's Dacha in Sochi, and the Pantsir S-1 complex is located 15 kilometers from the Bocharev Ruchi, which is the summer residence of the Russian dictator. So this is quite disturbing news for Putin indeed. His Dacha in Sochi, which is one of his mansions, has now been discovered to be protected by air defense, and now Ukrainian intelligence knows exact locations of that air defense. So this is quite bad for him, so I'm sure he won't be able to visit this new mansion here anytime in the near future until they get this sorted out and probably move the air defense around once again. But Ukrainian intelligence has really been making big strides in locating and targeting air defense in the past couple of weeks. So I would not be surprised to see these get hit maybe in the near future. And real quick, we'll take a look at the video here just so you can see the Pantsirs. There it is. There's one right behind a bit of a wall right there, and whoever's filming this, I'm assuming the Ukrainian, is sitting here taking some footage of it over a wall, apparently standing on top of an elevation or a building, and there you can see the radar spinning around in a circle on top of it. So they're hiding the air defense somewhat in plain sight, really, but it's behind a green wall so the civilians don't see it and probably get panicked. But there it is. But with that, we're moving on to our next news article, and this one goes to Nexta as well, and we're learning from the Financial Times that the U.S., Israel, and Ukraine are currently negotiating the supply of up to 8 Patriot air defense systems to Kyiv, and quote-unquote, the contours of the deal, which would mark a change in Israel's relations with Moscow, were discussed between senior officials of the countries. So on this one, I'm very glad to hear that Israel is deciding to send their retired Patriot systems to Ukraine, most likely. The negotiations haven't wrapped up just yet, but it sounds like it's almost a done deal, because I was beginning to get worried that Israel was going to either scrap these Patriot systems or not give them to Ukraine, which would be quite a waste and also somewhat selfish, but it sounds like Israel will hand them over to Kyiv in the near future, which is very positive news. And with that, we're going to move on to our next news article here, and this one goes to Nexta, and this one says about 10,000 migrants who received Russian citizenship were sent to the war, and this was stated by the head of the Investigative Committee of Russia, Alexander Bastrykin, and he says, "We have identified over 30,000 migrants who acquired citizenship but did not register for military service, and we have registered them, and approximately 10,000 have been sent to the military operations zone," according to that Investigative Committee chairman. So this is quite wild to hear. The Russians are not even hiding the fact at this point that the migrants that are coming into their country are being sent directly into the meat grinder to almost meet a certain death. And now if you want to migrate to Russia, just understand that when you go there, you're going to be put most likely into that meat grinder. You're not going to be allowed Russian citizenship without a lot of strings attached to it. And basically, you have to go to Ukraine, survive that environment, and then somehow be able to come back to Russia and enjoy the fruits of your, I guess you could call labor, if you can call it that. But nonetheless, Russia's not taking any effort to hide the fact that they're sending migrants to war, which is absolutely insane to hear. And Russia's trying to scrap together manpower from anywhere they can find it, and this is a clear sign of desperation. But with that, moving on to our next news article here, we have one from the Spectator Index, and we're also learning that the NATO chief, which is Stoltenberg, says that the Russian military is not capable of big breakthroughs on the battlefield in Ukraine as of right now. And the clear reason why this is, in my opinion, is because Russia keeps doing these early offensive, like for example on Kharkiv, they don't have enough equipment to pull them off, nor do they have enough soldiers to pull it off, but they're so desperate for a propaganda victory that they go in, they rush to failure, and they end up losing. And that's been pretty much the story of the Russian military since the beginning of the invasion, and thankfully that works in Ukraine's favor. But Russia is not prepared to do any big breakthroughs, and now the NATO chief is even confirming that himself, that Russia's in no shape to make any type of major advance on the battlefield, and for right now, Ukraine simply needs to hold their ground, and they'll be good to go. So very interesting news from the NATO chief, but really honestly not that shocking. But with that, we're going to move on to our next news article here, and this one goes to Fintech's News, and we're going to switch gears just a little bit to cover the Israel news once again, because right now there are currently some major issues happening in that region, which could lead to a direct war. And right now we're learning that a large-scale confrontation between Israel and Hezbollah is likely to break out in the next several weeks if Israel and Hamas fail to reach a ceasefire deal, according to U.S. intelligence. And on this one, many people have been asking for the potential time frame of a war that might break out between Israel and also Hezbollah on Lebanese territory. We've been saying maybe about 7 days or so, about the next week, and it looks like U.S. intelligence is saying actually it could be several weeks. So right now we're really not sure exactly what the timeline looks like. All we know is there's a major escalation happening in the region, and right now Hezbollah and Israel are very close to going to a full-blown war, which could result in Lebanon getting dragged in. But with that, we're moving on to our next post here, and this one goes to the Mossad commentary, and right now we're learning of absolute chaos in Lebanon as people panic as this potential war brews on the horizon. So let's take a look at the video and see just how bad the panic is. And right here, you can hear there is panic going on. There's police everywhere, and it looks like just chaos. I'm not sure what they're really doing here, but it's certainly not organized, and people are in a panic. So whatever the cause of this may be, if it's really the panic from a potential war breaking out, people are losing it. And also people are lining up at the airports quite significantly to try to flee the country. So certainly a lot of panic in the country. And in our next post here, which goes to Inside North Korea Geopolitics, we're learning that the U.S. is now moving U.S. military assets closer to Israel and Lebanon to be ready to evacuate Americans from Lebanon, according to U.S. officials. So clearly, with the U.S. getting ready to evacuate the citizens from Lebanon, and also all the other countries as well, calling for their citizens to evacuate and leave immediately, clearly the tensions are rising so high that war is imminent. It's just simply a matter of time when this might actually break out. But hey, in the end, you never know. It could break out sooner, it could break out later. You never really know, but nonetheless, we will be here to cover it when it finally does break out. But with that, that is actually our last piece of news for the day. So I hope you found today's video informative, and if you have found it informative, please press the like button and also subscribe to the channel as well, because that greatly helps to get the news out there, and also we love to see that people love the reporting. And also, if you want to support our channel financially, you can do so on our Patreon page, and the link is in the description below for that, where you can go over to Patreon, sign up for a monthly membership, and that greatly helps us keep the news running in a financial way. And with that, thank you all for watching, and be sure to join us tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern for our nightly war news stream for more war news coverage. And with that, bye-bye for now.